Imagine a scientist sitting inside a quiet laboratory late at night. It is the early 20th century. Microscopes are simple, technology is limited, but curiosity is extremely powerful. The scientist is staring at two tiny cells under a microscope, one sperm cell and one egg cell. At that moment, a strange question appears in his mind. What would happen if sperm from one species met the egg of another species? Would life still begin, or would nature stop it? This question fascinated many scientists during the early days of modern biology. One famous researcher who explored the mysteries of fertilization was Jacques Loeb. He was known for his bold experiments, trying to understand how life begins at the cellular level. Scientists began experimenting with eggs from creatures like sea urchins, frogs, and other animals. They wanted to understand the basic rules of fertilization. In some laboratory tests, something very surprising happened. Sometimes sperm from one species was actually able to enter the egg of another species. For a moment, scientists thought something incredible might happen. Would a new kind of life begin? But then something strange occurred. The cell stopped developing. No embryo formed. No organism grew. It was as if nature itself placed an invisible barrier and said, "This is not allowed." For decades, scientists kept studying fertilization, genetics, and evolution to understand why this happens. Even today, this question still appears on the internet, in classrooms, and sometimes in controversial discussions. People often ask, can human sperm fertilize the egg of an animal? Is it biologically possible? Has it ever happened? Or is it completely impossible according to science? In this video, we are going to explore this question step by step using real biology, real experiments, and real scientific facts. But before we answer the question, we first need to understand how fertilization actually works inside the human body. Because once you understand that process, the answer to this mysterious question becomes much clearer. So let's begin. Before we answer the big question, we need to understand something very important. How does fertilization actually happen? Inside the human body, fertilization is not a simple process. In fact, it is one of the most complex biological events in nature. Every human life begins from two microscopic cells. One is the sperm cell, which comes from the father. The other is the egg cell, which comes from the mother. The sperm cell is extremely small and designed for one purpose: to travel. It has a long tail that helps it swim. The egg cell, on the other hand, is much larger. It stays inside the female reproductive system, waiting for the sperm. But here is the interesting part. During fertilization, millions of sperm cells start the journey, but only one single sperm is allowed to enter the egg. It's like a race where millions compete, but only one wins. When the winning sperm finally reaches the egg, something amazing happens. The sperm releases special enzymes that help it pass through the outer protective layer of the egg. Once the sperm enters, the egg immediately changes its outer surface. This change acts like a biological shield, blocking all other sperm. Nature only allows one sperm per egg. After that moment, the DNA from the sperm and the egg combine. Each of them carries 23 chromosomes. When they merge together, they form a new cell called a zygote with 46 chromosomes. This zygote now contains the complete genetic blueprint of a new human being. It already determines things like eye color, hair color, height potential, and thousands of other genetic traits. Then the zygote begins dividing. 2 cells become 4, 4 become 8. 8 becomes 16. Slowly, this tiny cluster of cells grows into an embryo, and after many months, a new human life is born. But here is where the story becomes very interesting. This entire process only works when the sperm and egg belong to the same species. Why? Because eggs have very specific biological recognition systems. Think of it like a high-security lock, and the sperm is the key. A human egg only recognizes human sperm. If the key does not match the lock, the door simply does not open. This is one of the reasons nature prevents different species from mixing genetically. But some scientists were curious enough to test what would happen if they tried anyway. And the results of those experiments were surprising. After scientists understood how fertilization works, many of them became curious about one strange possibility. What would happen if sperm from one species was placed near the egg of another species? Would fertilization occur, or would nature completely block it? During the mid-20th century, scientists began performing controlled laboratory experiments to find the answer. One of the most famous tests involved something unexpected: hamster eggs. Researchers discovered that hamster eggs could be used as a tool to study human fertility. But there was a special trick involved. Normally, eggs have a protective outer layer called the zona pellucida. This layer acts like a security barrier that only allows sperm from the same species to enter. So scientists carefully removed this outer layer from hamster eggs. Without the barrier, something surprising happened. When human sperm was placed near these hamster eggs in a laboratory dish, the sperm was sometimes able to enter the egg cell. For a moment, it looked like fertilization might actually be happening. But then scientists observed something very important. The cell never developed into an embryo. The development stopped very early. This experiment became known as the hamster egg penetration test, and it was used for many years to study whether human sperm cells were healthy and capable of entering an egg. One of the scientists who helped develop this research method was Yanagimachi Ryuzo, a pioneer in reproductive biology. But it is very important to understand something. Even though human sperm could sometimes enter the hamster egg under laboratory conditions, it never created a hybrid organism. The genetic systems were simply too different. The chromosomes could not properly combine. Cell division could not continue, and the process stopped. These experiments helped scientists understand something fundamental about biology. Nature has extremely strong barriers that prevent different species from reproducing with each other. But scientists were still curious. If cross-species fertilization doesn't work, then how do hybrid animals like mules exist? And what makes some species able to mix while others cannot? That question leads us to the next fascinating part of this story. In the next section, we will explore real hybrid animals that exist in nature, and why those cases are very different from humans and other animals. At this point, you might be thinking about something interesting. If cross-species fertilization is impossible, then how do hybrid animals exist? For example, many people have heard about animals like the mule. A mule is created when a horse mates with a donkey. The result is a strong and hard-working animal called a mule. But here is the interesting part. Even though a mule is born successfully, it usually cannot reproduce. Most mules are sterile, which means they cannot have babies. Why does this happen? It happens because horses and donkeys have different numbers of chromosomes. A horse has 64 chromosomes, while a donkey has 62 chromosomes. When they combine, the mule ends up with 63 chromosomes. This odd number causes problems during reproduction, so the mule cannot produce healthy reproductive cells. Now let's look at another famous hybrid, the liger. A liger is created when a lion mates with a tiger. Ligers are actually the largest cats in the world. They grow bigger than both lions and tigers. But again, there is a catch. Most ligers are also sterile, especially the males. Now here is the key thing to understand. These hybrid animals are only possible because the parent species are very closely related in evolution. Lions and tigers belong to the same genus called Panthera. Horses and donkeys also belong to the same biological family. Their DNA is similar enough that fertilization can sometimes work. But humans are not closely related to animals like dogs, cows, or cats in that way. The evolutionary distance is enormous, millions of years of separate evolution. Because of that difference, the genetic systems simply cannot match. Even if sperm somehow enters the egg in laboratory conditions, the DNA cannot organize itself properly. The embryo cannot form. Development stops almost immediately. This shows us something amazing about biology. Nature has built powerful systems to protect species boundaries. But modern science has recently started exploring something even more surprising. Instead of creating hybrids, scientists are trying something called human-animal chimeras, and the goal of that research is not what you might expect. So far, we have learned something important. Cross-species fertilization between humans and animals does not work because of strong biological barriers. But modern science has taken a different path. Instead of trying to fertilize eggs from different species, researchers began exploring something called chimeras. A chimera is an organism that contains cells from two different species. This may sound strange, but the purpose of this research is actually medical. One of the biggest problems in medicine today is the shortage of transplant organs. Millions of people around the world are waiting for organs like kidneys, hearts, livers, lungs. Many patients die every year because suitable donor organs are not available. So scientists started asking a bold question. What if we could grow human organs inside animals? To explore this idea, researchers began experimenting with animal embryos, especially pigs. Because pig organs are similar in size to human organs, scientists take human stem cells and carefully introduce them into an early animal embryo. These human cells can sometimes grow alongside the animal's cells. The result is called a human-animal chimera embryo. One of the researchers studying this field is Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte, who has conducted experiments involving human stem cells and animal embryos. The goal of this research is not to create hybrid creatures. Instead, scientists hope that one day an animal like a pig could grow a human-compatible organ that could be transplanted into a patient. Imagine a future where someone needing a kidney transplant does not have to wait years. A life-saving organ could be grown specifically for that patient. However, this type of research is extremely sensitive and controversial. Many governments and scientific organizations have strict ethical rules. For example, institutions like the National Institutes of Health regulate and monitor such experiments very carefully. Most chimera embryos are only allowed to develop for a short time in laboratory conditions and are never allowed to grow into full organisms. This ensures that the research stays focused on medical science, not on crossing species boundaries. So while the idea may sound like science fiction, the real goal is very simple: to save human lives. But after all these experiments and decades of research, scientists have reached a clear conclusion about the question we started with. And in the final part of this video, we will answer that question once and for all. Can human sperm actually fertilize an animal egg? Let's look at the final scientific answer. After decades of scientific research, laboratory experiments, and modern genetic studies, scientists have finally reached a very clear conclusion. The question we started with was simple but fascinating. Can human sperm fertilize an animal egg? Based on everything we now know about biology, genetics, and evolution, the answer is no. Even if scientists place human sperm near an animal egg in laboratory conditions, several powerful biological barriers prevent real fertilization. First, eggs have special recognition proteins that only allow sperm from the same species to enter naturally. Second, even if a sperm cell manages to enter under artificial conditions, the DNA from both species cannot properly combine. The chromosomes simply do not match. Without matching chromosomes, the cell cannot divide normally. And without normal cell division, an embryo cannot develop. Nature stops the process almost immediately. This is why scientists have never observed a true human-animal hybrid organism. Over millions of years of evolution, species have developed strong biological systems to protect their genetic identity. Humans evolved separately from other animals for a very long time. Even our closest relatives, chimpanzees, are genetically different enough that reproduction between species is impossible. In fact, studying these biological barriers has helped scientists understand something even more important: how life protects itself. These natural protections ensure that each species continues its own unique evolutionary path. But the research we talked about earlier, like stem cell studies and chimeras, shows something else about science. Science is not trying to create strange creatures. Instead, scientists are trying to understand life better and solve real problems. For example, treating infertility, improving IVF technology, studying genetic diseases, and possibly growing transplant organs in the future. All of these discoveries came from scientists asking unusual questions about how life begins. So the next time you hear a strange biology question like this one, remember something important. Science is driven by curiosity. Sometimes a simple question can lead to discoveries that help millions of people. And that curiosity is what continues pushing human knowledge forward. If you found this topic interesting and want to explore more surprising questions about biology and science, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next video, because the world of science is full of mysteries that are waiting to be explored.